Have you ever been humiliated in public by the very people who were supposed to welcome you? At my engagement dinner, Harrison Whitmore, my future father-in-law, lifted his glass and said, "So Calder's here for the money, huh?" The laughter came fast, polite, intentional, ice cold. And then Maddie, my fiancée, laughed too, light and comfortable, like I was born to be the joke. I didn't yell, I didn't beg. I reached across the table, slid the ring off her finger, and set it beside her untouched champagne. My chair scraped the marble, one sharp sound that killed every smile. If you've ever stayed quiet while something inside you broke, stay with me. Because the moment I walked out of that restaurant, I finally started seeing what she'd been hiding for a long time. I walked out to the parking lot and didn't look back. Not because I was trying to prove something, because if I turned around, I knew I'd see her face, and I wasn't sure I could keep my hands from shaking. The laughter from that private room followed me through the hallway like it had a leash on my neck. Outside, the night air felt too clean for what had just happened. I stared at my left hand as I reached for my keys. Empty. No ring, no promise. Just skin and a quiet pulse. For a second, I actually listened for anger, waiting for it to show up and do its job. It didn't. What I felt was colder than that, like someone had flipped a switch and shut something off. My phone buzzed. Maddie. Her name lit up the screen like nothing had changed. I watched it ring, then press decline. One tap, one decision. I started the engine and pulled out, and the farther I got, the clearer one thought became. I wasn't driving away from a dinner. I was driving away from a pattern. By the time I got home, the house felt unfamiliar, like it was waiting to see what kind of man walked through the door. I set my keys down and stood in the kitchen without turning on a light. The quiet was thick. My phone sat on the counter like a live wire. After a long minute, I hit play on her voicemail. Her voice came out soft, careful. "You know how my dad is. Don't make this a big deal. Don't make it a big deal." That line landed harder than Gold Digger ever could because it told me exactly where I ranked. Not beside her, not in front of her, somewhere behind the peace she wanted to keep with her family. I leaned against the counter and let old moments line up in my head. Her changing the subject when he took shots at me, her smile that said just let it go, her silence when I needed her to have my back. I turned the phone face down. The screen went black, but my thoughts didn't. For the first time, I said it out loud, barely a whisper. She didn't protect me. And right after that came the next thought, sharp, unavoidable. None of this is adding up. When I flipped my phone face down, another memory slid into place like it had been waiting. The first time I met Harrison was at one of those country club charity mixers. Linen napkins, iced bourbon, men shaking hands like they were trading stock. He didn't ask how I met Maddie. He didn't ask what I loved about her. He asked what I did for a living the way a banker asks for your credit score. "What line of work are you in, Calder?" I told him the truth. "Construction and remodeling, owner-operator, built it from scratch." He gave me this tight little smile, half polite, half dismissive. "From scratch," he repeated, like it was a cute hobby. A low blow wrapped in manners, the kind that stings because nobody else hears it. Under the table, Maddie's hand found my knee. One soft squeeze, not a defense, not a correction, just a quiet signal. Don't react. And that was the first time I understood the rule in their world. Keep everything smooth, keep everything quiet, even if it costs someone else. Even if that someone is the man sitting beside you. Back in my kitchen, the yellow light over the stove made everything look tired. I sat down like my body needed permission to stop moving. I'd spent my whole life chasing stability, putting a roof over my own head, keeping the lights on, paying bills on time. Not because I worship money, but because I know what it feels like when life has no cushion. I don't fear being broke. I fear being small in someone else's eyes. And Harrison didn't just call me a gold digger. He tried to shrink me in front of a room. The part that kept replaying, though, wasn't his voice. It was Maddie's laugh. Easy, effortless, like my humiliation was just the cost of admission into her family. I stared at the dark phone on the counter and felt something settle in my chest. Not rage, not panic, a decision. I wasn't going to yell, I wasn't going to plead, I wasn't going to chase her version of peace. Quiet men listen. Quiet men notice. And if the story didn't add up, I was done guessing. I was going to watch. The next morning, her message came in like nothing had happened. "Can we talk?" I stared at it longer than I needed to, then typed one word back. "Tonight." That was it. No heart emoji, no soft landing, just a period, quiet and final. Almost immediately she replied, longer this time. Careful sentences, apologies without specifics. Every word polished like she'd read them out loud before hitting send. It struck me how smooth it all was. Too smooth. Like she was managing a situation, not reaching for me. I set the phone down and remembered how often I'd seen it face down on the table lately. How she'd shift it just a little when I walked by. How notifications stopped appearing the moment I entered a room. At the time, I told myself I was being paranoid. That trust meant not asking questions you didn't want answers to. But standing there in the quiet kitchen, coffee going cold, I felt something change. I realized I wasn't trusting my instincts anymore. I was negotiating with them, and that scared me more than whatever she might be hiding. That thought pulled a string and the memories came fast, late meetings that didn't line up. "Just slammed at work," she'd say, kicking off her shoes. Sometimes she'd come home with a scent that wasn't hers, something sharper, unfamiliar. I'd ask about it, casual, trying not to sound like a man counting steps. She'd smile and laugh it off. "You're being sensitive," she'd say, brushing past me. "You worry too much." And I'd let it go, every time. Not because it made sense, but because I wanted peace. Because I didn't want to be the guy who questioned his own fiancée over nothing. Sitting there now, I saw it clearly. That wasn't reassurance. It was dismissal. A soft kind, wrapped in affection, but dismissal all the same. Gaslighting doesn't always come loud and cruel. Sometimes it comes gentle, smiling, telling you you're wrong for feeling what you feel. And the hardest part to admit wasn't what she'd done. It was this. I helped her by looking away. After that night, I stopped listening to her words and started watching the spaces between them. The little gaps people leave when they're lying and don't know it. Her calendar shifted around like it had a mind of its own. Plans moved, dinners pushed, meetings that suddenly ran late. When I asked, the answers came short. Clean, too clean. One morning I reached for my toothbrush and found it sitting in the wrong holder. Small thing, stupid thing. Except our bathroom had been the same for years. Then there were her notifications. There 1 second, gone the next, like her phone was trained to erase itself the moment I entered a room. She'd smile and say, "Babe, don't start," like I was the problem for noticing. But her eyes didn't match the smile. They slid away. Quick. Automatic. A woman trying to keep everything smooth. I didn't confront her. I didn't accuse. I just collected the silence, filed it away. And somewhere in that quiet, it didn't add up, stopped being a feeling and turned into a fact. Because when a life is real, you don't have to edit it. That evening, I kept it simple. No speech, no drama, just one question, like a small tap on glass. "Where were you last night?" Maddie answered too fast, like she'd been waiting for it. "Work. We had a team dinner. It ran late." Smooth. Practiced. She didn't even blink. So I asked for something harmless. "Where'd you go?" She hesitated, just a fraction, then tossed out a place in Uptown. And right away she changed the subject. Asked about my day. Asked if I'd eaten. Asked anything that would pull the spotlight off her story. That's when I looked at her hand. The ring, the diamond catching the kitchen light. It used to mean we were building something. In that moment it looked like a prop. Something shiny meant to keep me calm while the real life happened somewhere else. I nodded once. Okay. But inside I felt it. The first flash of fear in her eyes. Not fear of losing me. Fear of being seen. After I asked my question and she dodged it, I didn't push. That's the thing about lies. If you chase them, they learn to run faster. I waited until the house was quiet, until Maddie was in the shower and the water covered every sound. Then I opened my laptop and signed into the shared cloud account we'd set up for convenience. Family plans, shared memories, shared trust. A new folder sat near the top. No name that meant anything, just a string of random letters. like she'd dropped her keys on the keyboard. That alone told me it was meant to be missed. I hovered the cursor over it and felt my chest tighten, not with panic, but with that heavy, slow certainty you get right before bad news becomes real. I didn't click right away. I took a breath. Another. Like I could control what I was about to see by controlling my lungs. Then I opened it. The first photo was dim, taken at an odd angle. Blurry lights, half a face, and in the corner, just enough to ruin everything, a man's shadow leaning in where I wasn't. I didn't scroll fast. I didn't let myself flinch. I treated it like a work estimate. Measure twice, cut once. I clicked into the file details and checked the metadata. Date, time, location tag. The timestamp lined up perfectly with one of those late meetings she'd tossed at me like an answer you weren't supposed to question. My hand stayed steady on the mouse, but my stomach dropped anyway. I zoomed in on the photo, hunting for anything concrete. That's when I saw it, her reflection in a glass door, clearer than the main image. Maddie, smiling, and a man's hand, confident and familiar, resting on her waist like it belonged there. Not a friendly touch, not an accidental brush. Possession. What hit me hardest wasn't even the hand. It was her smile, not the polite, controlled smile she gave me at family dinners. This one was loose, free, like she'd taken off more than a ring, like she'd taken off the version of herself that came home to me. I saved the file, quietly, no trace, because at that point I wasn't looking for a fight, I was collecting proof. I stayed in that folder longer than I wanted to, not because I needed more pain, because I needed clarity. Then I saw it. A voice note file with a name that didn't belong in our life. Ethan. Just seeing the name tightened something behind my ribs. Maddie had said it before, months ago, like it was nothing. Ethan's just a friend. Ancient history. The kind of line you're supposed to accept because questioning it makes you insecure. I clicked the voice note and listened for 3 seconds. That was all it took. Not even words. Just her tone. Softer. Warmer. The way someone sounds when they think they're safe. I shut it off before my imagination could do the rest. I didn't need details. I needed confirmation. I stood up and went to the bathroom, turned on the cold water and washed my face like I could rinse off what I'd just learned. I looked at myself in the mirror and barely recognized the calm on my own expression. Ethan wasn't a suspicion anymore. He was a target. And I wasn't going to confront a feeling. I was going to confirm a fact. The next day I moved like normal. Work calls, coffee, small talk. I let Maddie believe the storm had passed because people get careless when they think you've calmed down. Then I checked her schedule. Nothing fancy, just the shared calendar and the little patterns she'd stopped noticing. There it was again. Work dinner, uptown. Same wording she'd used before. Same neat little label that could mean anything and explain everything at the same time. When she walked into the kitchen, I asked like it didn't matter. Dinner tonight. Who's it with? She didn't even pause. The team. 2 words. Smooth. Safe. Like a door closing. I nodded once. Okay. But inside my head, 2 realities were running side by side like train tracks that were about to collide. On one track was her calm voice. Team dinner. Late meeting. Don't worry. On the other was that cloud folder. Dim photos, a man's hand on her waist, her smile that wasn't meant for me. I didn't accuse her, not yet. I just let the 2 truths sit next to each other until the lie started to sweat. That night I told myself I was just driving through uptown, not following, not spying, just looking. There's a difference you tell yourself when you're trying to stay like the man you recognize. I kept my distance, rolled past slow, and my stomach tightened the second I saw the valet stand. Maddie's car was there. Parked like it belonged, like she'd done this 100 times. I pulled into a spot across the street and sat with both hands on the wheel. My knuckles went pale before I even noticed. I whispered it to myself like a rule. Don't make a scene. Don't become the guy they can point at later and say, see? He's unstable. Then I saw her. She stepped out under the lights, hair perfect, posture calm. And a tall man in a blazer walked up like he already knew the ending. He didn't hesitate. Neither did she. They hugged. Close, familiar, the kind of embrace that doesn't come with explanations. In that moment, every team dinner turned into a joke with my name on it. I didn't take a picture. Not because I couldn't, because I didn't need to. Some things burn themselves into your memory so clean you'll see them in the dark for years. I watched long enough to understand what I was looking at. Then I started the car and drove home like my life depended on staying calm. The roads felt too empty. The radio stayed off. I kept thinking about that hug, how easy it was, how natural, like I was the extra, not the fiancé. By the time I walked into the house, my hands were steady again, but my chest felt hollow. I poured a glass of water and gripped it like it was something solid I could trust. My fingers trembled anyway, just a little, enough to notice. And then my mind snapped back to the engagement dinner, the laughter, the toast, Harrison calling me a gold digger while everyone played along. Punchline, that's what they made me. And the worst part? They were so comfortable doing it because they were sure I'd swallow it. I set the glass down and made a quiet decision. I was going to end this in a way they couldn't laugh off. Once I knew, I didn't need more pain. I needed the cleanest proof, the kind that doesn't argue back. I went back into the shared cloud and picked the one photo that said everything without a caption. Maddie in the reflection, a man's hand on her waist, and the timestamp matching her late meeting. No guessing, no drama, just facts. I printed exactly one copy. The printer hummed in the quiet house like it understood what it was doing. When the page slid out, the ink looked too real, like it had weight. I stared at it until my breathing evened out, then folded it once and slipped it into an envelope. I sealed it, not for effect, but for control. I put the envelope in the kitchen drawer right beside the house keys, the place we both reached for without thinking. Ordinary, familiar, final. Then I waited. No texts, no pacing, just stillness. Because sometimes silence isn't empty. Sometimes it's a weapon you don't swing until you're sure it lands. Maddie walked in a little after 9. Her eyes were red, but everything else looked too composed, like the tears had been planned and cleaned up. She paused in the doorway, waiting for me to soften. I didn't. "I don't want to lose you," she said, voice small, careful. I didn't ask questions. Questions give people room to build a story. I opened the kitchen drawer, took out the envelope, and slid it across the counter toward her. She froze. Not in a dramatic way, just a tiny stop in her body, like her nerves recognized the truth before her mouth could. She picked it up with 2 fingers. Her hands started to shake. "Calder, what is this?" I stayed quiet, let her sit in the silence she'd been feeding me for months. She opened it, and in 1 second, the color drained from her face. Her eyes locked on that photo like it was a mirror she couldn't look away from. The room didn't get loud, it got heavy. And her silence finally admitted what her words never would. Maddie stared at the photo like it could bite her. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Where did you get this?" I didn't blink. "Doesn't matter." Tears came fast after that. Whether they were real or practiced, I couldn't tell anymore. She reached for my hand like habit, like touch could erase evidence. I stepped back. "Don't," I said. Not loud, just final. She tried to flood the room with words. "I can explain. It's not what it looks like. You're misunderstanding." I held her gaze. "Then tell me what it is." Her throat tightened. She shook her head, crying harder, and then she said the line that kills trust faster than cheating ever does. "It didn't mean anything." I felt something in me go cold. "Nothing?" I repeated. "So you're saying I'm supposed to believe this was just noise?" I leaned in just enough for her to hear the question that mattered more than the photo. "Then what did your laugh mean?" I said. "Back at that dinner, when your dad made me the joke, and you laughed too." Her tears didn't answer. Her silence did. She wiped her face with the back of her hand, smearing mascara like the truth was leaking out. "Okay," she breathed. "Okay. I saw him. A few times." A few times is what people say when they want numbers to stay foggy. I didn't argue. I didn't ask for details. I asked one question, clean and straight. "When did it start?" Her eyes slipped away. Her mouth opened, then closed. The pause stretched so long it felt like a confession by itself. In that silence, I could almost hear her calculating what version of the truth I might accept. "Maddie," I said, calm as steel. "When?" She swallowed. "Before," she whispered. "Before what?" Her voice cracked. Before you proposed. That sentence didn't need yelling around it. It landed like a hammer, heavy, blunt, permanent. Because it meant the ring, the photos, the dinner, her father's joke. It was all happening while she was still letting me believe we were building a life together. And suddenly the laughter at that table made sick sense. They weren't laughing at a punchline. They were laughing because they thought I'd never see it. I sat down, not because I was weak, because the ground under me had shifted and my legs finally noticed. My mind flashed to the night I proposed. Maddie crying, both hands on her mouth, nodding so hard she looked scared I'd change my mind. I'm all in, she'd said. I remember believing it like a man believes in solid wood and straight lines, something you can build on. And now I understood she'd been living two lives at the same time, switching masks like it was nothing. One version of her held my face and talked about forever. The other took off into the night and came back with a smile she didn't bring home. I stared at the photo again, but what I saw wasn't Ethan's hand. I saw the ring, what it was supposed to mean, and how cheaply it had been used. A promise turned into a prop. My name turned into a joke. I looked at her and said it quietly because loud would have been mercy. I'm done. For the first time, her eyes went wide with real panic, like she finally realized I wasn't negotiating. Maddie dropped to her knees like the floor could hold her up better than the truth. She reached for my leg, then stopped herself, hands hovering in the air like she didn't know what she was allowed to touch anymore. Please, she said. Calder, please. My dad. You don't understand. I'm under so much pressure. I nodded once, slow. Pressure doesn't make you laugh in my face. That landed. She flinched like I'd raised my voice, even though I hadn't. She tried a different angle. Promises, therapy, starting over, anything that sounded like a plan. Then she said the word people use when they want relief without consequence. I just need closure. I almost smiled. Not because it was funny, because it was predictable. Closure isn't a gift, I told her. It's a consequence. I stood up, walked to the front door and opened it. The night air rolled in. Go, I said. No anger, no speech. Just a boundary she couldn't talk her way around. The week after Maddie left was quiet in a way that didn't feel peaceful. It felt like the kind of silence you hear after a wreck, when the dust is still floating and your ears haven't caught up yet. I threw myself into work because work doesn't lie to you. You show up, you build, you get paid. It keeps the lights on. It keeps your hands busy when your head wants to replay every moment you missed. And that's when it hit me. I'd been carrying the peace in that house for a long time, swallowing my instincts, letting comments slide, making myself smaller so her world could stay smooth. I called it love. It was maintenance. Her texts came in waves, long paragraphs, memories, apologies that never quite touched the truth. I miss you. I'm sorry. Please talk to me. The more I stayed silent, the more frantic they got, like my quiet was the first thing she couldn't control. I didn't reply, not because I wanted revenge, because any answer would have been a rope, and she'd have pulled herself right back into my life with it. On the 7th day, my phone rang with a number I didn't have saved, but I knew it anyway. Harrison Whitmore. His voice had that same polished calm, like he was calling about a business deal. Calder, he said. We need to talk man to man. No apology. No, I was out of line. Just the assumption that this could be handled, contained, cleaned up like a spill on a carpet. He talked about reputation, about how things get misunderstood, about how Maddie was emotional. Then he said the word that always meant do what benefits us. Family. I listened without interrupting. I let him build his little tower of reasons. Then I said, fine. One word. Where? He named the same steakhouse, the same room, like he wanted to reset the scene and rewrite the ending. I agreed, hung up, and stared at the dark screen. My stomach didn't twist. My hands didn't shake. I just felt that cold clarity again, because I knew exactly what that call was. They wanted to make me the punchline one last time, and I was finally ready to hand it back. I got there early and asked for the same private room, same table, same lighting. I chose the seat I'd had on engagement night, like I was walking back into a scene to see it with new eyes. The hostess smiled like nothing bad ever happened in that building. I ordered water. No alcohol. I wanted my head clear, my hands steady, my memory sharp. The envelope sat inside my jacket, pressed against my ribs. It felt heavier than paper should, like it carried a week of sleepless nights and one clean truth. I looked around. No audience, no polite laughter, no pearl-clutching guests. Just the quiet clink of silverware from somewhere outside the door. The kind of quiet that makes a man hear his own heartbeat. Then Harrison walked in. He moved like he owned the place, shoulders back, smile ready, the confidence of a man who's never had to apologize and still sleeps fine at night. He shook my hand like we were closing a deal, and in that moment, I saw it plain. He still thought he was above me. He still thought this was his room. Harrison sat down and didn't waste time pretending to care about my feelings. "Maddie made mistakes," he said, like he was reading a statement prepared by a lawyer. "But you have to understand, people are watching." There it was. Not love, not trust. Optics. Then he pivoted, smooth as oil. "You took it too far, Calder. Walking out like that. Public scene. You embarrassed her. You embarrassed us." Like my humiliation was fine, but my reaction was the real crime. He slid a folder across the table, papers inside, neat and official. "A simple agreement," he said. "We put this behind us, quietly. Everyone moves on." He talked about connections, opportunities, how Dallas works. He didn't threaten me directly. He didn't have to. He just painted the picture: cooperate, or lose access to rooms you were never invited into anyway. I let him talk. I nodded once in the right places. I watched the way his mouth tightened when I didn't bend. And that's when I understood something that made my blood go cold. Harrison still saw me as a doormat. A man you can step on, then lecture for leaving a footprint. I let Harrison finish his little speech. Then I reached into my jacket and set one thing on the table first. The ring. Just the ring. No words. His eyebrows lifted like he thought I'd come crawling back, like he'd been right about me all along. I didn't correct him. I simply slid a second item onto the white tablecloth. The photo. He leaned in with that confident half-smile still hanging on his face, the smile of a man who thinks every problem can be managed. Then his eyes landed on the reflection. The hand. The timestamp. The truth. His breath caught. Not dramatic, just a small hitch, like his body forgot how to keep up the act. The room went so quiet it felt like someone had shut the air off. Even the clink of silverware outside the door seemed to stop. For the first time since I'd known him, Harrison didn't have a line ready. No joke, no lecture, no reputation, just silence. Old money, finally speechless, and I didn't feel victorious. I felt steady, because the power in that room had changed hands without a single raised voice. Harrison recovered the way men like him always do, by trying to laugh. It came out thin. "And what is this supposed to prove?" he asked, tapping the edge of the photo like it was a bad receipt. I didn't argue. I pointed to the details, the date, the time, the little digital stamp that doesn't care who your father is or how many rooms you own in this city. "That night," I said, "look at the timestamp." His eyes tracked where my finger rested, and the color in his face started to drain. I didn't stop. I went one step deeper, because I wanted the truth to land where my humiliation had landed. "It's the same night you stood up in this room," I said, voice calm, "and toasted new beginnings." His hand trembled, just enough to notice. The confident posture cracked. He swallowed hard, then lowered his voice like we were suddenly in church. "What do you want, Calder?" I looked at him and answered honestly, because it wasn't money. It wasn't revenge. "I want you to look at me like a man." Harrison's face tightened, then smoothed out like he was switching masks. He leaned back and started offering things. Money first, then connections, then the kind of favors men trade in quiet rooms. "We can make this right," he said. "You're a hard-working guy. There are opportunities in this town if you play it smart." Then he landed where he always landed. "Our family name matters." I nodded once, not agreeing, just letting him hear himself. "A name doesn't save you from the truth," I said. "Reputation won't change what happened." His voice dropped. "Calder, let's keep this private, for everyone's sake. We can all save face here." That word, face, was the whole religion. I looked at him and felt the last bit of heat drain out of me, replaced by something sharper. "You know what's wild?" I said, calm. "You didn't just raise a daughter, you trained her." He frowned. "You taught her when to smile," I continued. "When to laugh. When to let a man bleed so the room stays comfortable." For the first time, Harrison's eyes lowered. Not anger, shame, small, but real. I didn't wait for an apology. I didn't need one. Apologies are cheap when they're only meant to patch a reputation. I stood up slowly and left the ring on the table, right beside the photo. 2 pieces of proof side by side, like exhibits in a case that didn't need a jury anymore. Harrison's hand lifted, like he might stop me, like he might throw one more deal across the table. Then it paused in midair and fell back. Even he knew there was nothing left to negotiate. I looked at him once, not with hate, just with clarity. And I said the only line that fit what that family had done to me. "Keep it," I told him. "It suits your family better." Then I turned and walked out. The hallway felt the same as it had on engagement night. Dim lights, soft music, that expensive quiet. But I wasn't leaving like a man running from embarrassment anymore. I was leaving like a man choosing his life. Behind me, there was no laughter, just silence. And for the first time in a long time, that silence belonged to me. That night, Maddie's messages came in long blocks, one after another, like she thought enough words could rebuild a foundation. She apologized, then reached for memories. Our first road trip, the stupid inside jokes, the way she used to fall asleep on my shoulder. Then she wrote, "I still love you, like love was a coupon you could redeem after you'd spent it on someone else." I read every line. I didn't respond, because I could hear what she wasn't saying. She wasn't fighting for us. She was fighting to feel less guilty. She wanted me to answer so she could tell herself she wasn't the villain, so she could file this under messy breakup instead of I betrayed him. My thumb hovered over the keyboard a few times. Not to forgive her, just to end the noise, but I knew any reply would become a door. So I chose peace over being right. I held down the thread and deleted it. The screen went blank, and for the first time all week, my chest felt quiet, like the storm finally lost my address. The next morning I started packing. Not in a dramatic way, just one drawer at a time, like I was doing inventory on a life that didn't fit anymore. Shirts, jeans, work boots. Every fold felt like folding up an illusion I'd been living in. I kept expecting my hands to shake, but they didn't. My body was calmer than my mind. In the back of a drawer I found the engagement photo. Maddie and me, smiling too hard, dressed up like we were already a success story. For a second, I held it and felt the old version of me reach forward, wanting to save something, anything. I didn't tear it. I didn't spit on it. I just turned it face down and slid it back like a file I no longer needed. That felt more honest than rage. When I was done, I walked to the kitchen counter and set the house key down. Metal on granite, small sound, big meaning. I didn't leave a note. I didn't make a scene. Quiet exits don't look like explosions, but they echo longer. I moved into a small apartment near one of my job sites. Nothing fancy, just a place with thin walls, a cheap blinds and carpet smell, and enough room for a bed and a table. The first night I didn't even bother setting up the frame. I dropped a mattress on the floor like I was starting over on purpose. When the lights went out, the AC kicked on and stayed on, steady, mechanical, almost comforting. I lay there staring at the ceiling, listening to that hum, thinking, at least here I don't have to perform. No forced smiles, no swallowing my instincts to keep someone else comfortable. Just quiet. The steakhouse felt like a past life now. White tablecloths, polished laughter, the scrape of my chair on marble, like a scene from a movie I used to believe I was in. The pain was still there, sitting in my ribs, but it wasn't blinding me anymore. It was cleaner, sharper, real. That's the strange part. When the lie dies, the hurt stays, but your eyes finally open. And once you see clearly, you don't go back. A buddy called me a couple days later, one of the guys who's seen me show up early, work late, and never complain. "So, what happened?" he asked, trying to sound casual like he wasn't bracing for a story. "It's done," I said. There was a pause on the line, the kind where you can hear someone waiting for the juicy part. The yelling, the accusations, the screenshots. That's what people expect. That's what makes them feel better about their own lives. But I didn't give it to him. He tried again. "You okay?" "I'm working," I said. And that was the truth. The next morning I was back on a job, sweating through my shirt, hands covered in dust, measuring boards, cutting clean lines. Work doesn't care if your heart's broken. It just asks if you can still show up. And showing up is survival. It's how a man rebuilds himself when something he trusted collapses. I didn't need to tell the story to feel real. I needed to live through it. One day, one paycheck, one quiet breath at a time. A few days later, I was scrolling on my phone in line for coffee, half awake, thumb doing what thumbs do. Then I saw it. One of those charity event photos everyone in Dallas seems to post. Bright lights, polished smiles, people dressed like their lives have never cracked. And there was Maddie, standing close to a guy in a blazer. Ethan. His arm wasn't even trying to hide what it was doing. And Maddie was smiling, easy, open, comfortable. The kind of smile I hadn't seen in a long time, not at home, not in the quiet parts of our life. Under the photo were comments full of sparkle. "Power couple. Love this. Y'all look amazing." My stomach didn't twist. It settled, like something finally clicked into the right slot. I realized I'd been in love with an image, of her, of us, of what I thought we were building. An image she knew how to perform. What I was seeing on that screen wasn't new, it was just unfiltered. I didn't comment. I didn't message. I just locked the phone and let the silence do its work. That night, Maddie texted again from a new angle. "Do you hate me that much?" For a second, my thumbs moved on their own. I typed, "I don't hate you." Then I stared at the words and felt that old trap forming. One reply, and suddenly I'm back in the same loop. Her pulling, me explaining, her needing relief, me paying for it. I deleted the message I'd typed. All I could hear was that steakhouse laugh, not Harrison's, hers. The sound that told me exactly how easy it was for her to let me be the joke if it kept her world smooth. That's when I understood something simple. As long as she could reach me, she could steer my emotions. She could make me the kind of man who reacts instead of decides. So I made it clean. I blocked her number, then her socials, then every door she kept trying to wedge open. Not out of spite, out of self-respect. Consequences aren't loud. They're final. After I blocked her, the world didn't get easier. It got quieter. And in that quiet, I realized self-respect isn't something you say with your chest out. It's something you do when nobody's clapping. It's packing your things without a speech. It's walking away without begging to be understood. It's choosing the hard, clean cut over the slow, dirty bleed. I kept thinking about men like me, guys in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, who've been talked down to by somebody with a better last name, a bigger paycheck, a louder voice. Most of us learn early, swallow it, keep working, don't make a scene. But there's a line between being steady and being used. Standing in that small apartment, I said it to myself like a promise I should have made years ago. I'm not your punchline, not Harrison's, not Maddie's, not anyone's. The pain was still there, sure, but it stopped owning me. It turned into posture, into a spine, and for the first time since that steakhouse, I felt my head come up. A week later, a text came through from a number I didn't recognize at first. No name, no greeting, just one line. "I've reconsidered everything." I stared at it until the screen dimmed. The words had Harrison's shape, careful, controlled, like even regret would have to pass through a filter first. I couldn't tell if it was an apology trying to be born or a warning wearing softer clothes. Either way, it wasn't for me. It was for him. Men like Harrison don't reconsider unless something forced them to. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. I could have asked what he meant. I could have replied with something sharp. I could have taken the bait and stepped back into their world. Instead, I set the phone down on the table and let it sit there unanswered. Because the truth had already done what it needed to do. It had followed him home. It had gotten into his house, into his name, into that polished little life he was always protecting. And for once, the powerful man wasn't the one holding the conversation hostage. He was. And I didn't have to say a word. After that message from Harrison, I kept thinking about what I'd wanted from Maddie in the first place. Not perfection, not a show, I just wanted her to have my back. That's it. When someone takes a cheap shot at the man you claim to love, you don't laugh along. You don't stay neutral. You stand with him, even if it makes the room uncomfortable. Because love isn't a vow said loud in front of people who don't care. Love is a choice you make when it costs you something: status, approval, comfort. And when she chose comfort, she didn't just embarrass me. She told me exactly how safe I was with her. Men can survive a lot. We work through pain. We keep the lights on. We push forward. But take a man's respect, and everything underneath starts to collapse. Your home, your sleep, your sense of self. That's what I finally understood. Leaving wasn't revenge. It was survival. It was me protecting the part of me that keeps going. Respect first. Everything else comes after. A couple days later, I found myself driving past that steakhouse again. I didn't plan it. I just took a wrong turn after a job and ended up on that same stretch of road. The sign was still there, glowing like nothing had ever happened. Cars pulling in, valet moving like life is always smooth for somebody. I didn't go inside. I didn't need to. I slowed down at the light and heard it in my head, the scrape of my chair on marble the night I stood up. Back then, it felt like walking out of a room full of judgment. Now it felt like the moment I stopped betraying myself. Not a breakup, a rebirth. I didn't win against Harrison. I didn't beat Ethan. I didn't even beat Maddie. I beat the version of me that would have stayed quiet, smiled through disrespect, and called it love. And if you're listening to this and you're living in a house where you're the joke, the last one to be defended, the first one expected to swallow it, hear me? Silence isn't surrender. Sometimes it's the moment control comes back home. Looking back, it wasn't the words "gold digger" that ended my engagement. I've heard worse on job sites. What broke it was the laugh, Maddie's laugh, because it told me I was disposable the moment standing up for me got inconvenient. A man's first job is survival. Protect the stability he's built, the peace in his home, the future he's worked his tail off to create. The second is love. But real love isn't a speech in front of a crowd. Real love is someone choosing your side when you're being disrespected, even if it makes the room go quiet. And the third is respect, the kind you can't buy and can't fake. Without it, every apology is just noise. So here's what I learned the hard way. I'm not your doormat. Now I'm curious, if you were sitting in that steakhouse and she laughed while he called you a gold digger, would you hand the ring back right there? Or would you swallow it and hear, "Don't make this a big deal for the rest of your life"? Drop ring back or stay quiet in the comments.